to leadership here at Kansas State University. This session kind of born out of grad students often asking, how does someone get into leadership in higher education? How does someone become a dean, an associate dean, a provost, a president? And what do they do in these roles? So, and there's a little giggle off to the side, right? So this is a special opportunity for students, faculty, to learn about the educational and professional journeys of some of our K-State leaders here in Manhattan, and to hear about how they got started and how they became engaged in university leadership. So, but even if you don't have intentions of moving into higher ed leadership, the lessons, the strategies, all of this applies to being a successful professional. And so we're really thankful to our esteemed panel today, and we will let them go through and introduce themselves here in just a moment. But thank you to our panelists for providing your insights and sharing the best practices and strategies with our graduate students and faculty as well. So without further ado, I'm going to turn this over to Alexa to start the event.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here today. We're beyond excited to welcome you all to our second Journey to Leadership hosted by the Grad Student Council in partnership with the grad school. My name is Alexa Hesseltine. I'm a master's student in public health, and I'm also the Graduate Student Council President-elect.
And I'm Srijana Mahat, a master's student in Biological and Agricultural Engineering Department and treasurer in GSC. So today we will be your moderator for our today's panel discussion. And we are thrilled to kick off what's going to be a great session.
Awesome. So this is a very special opportunity for you to learn directly from the distinguished leaders of Kansas State University about their leadership journey and the work they do. So let's start by introducing them. Please help me welcome Dr. Richard Linton, President of Kansas State University.
Well, good morning, everybody. Rich Linton, President of Kansas State. I've been president for just about 4 years. My leadership journey was as a faculty member with a 3-way appointment, research, teaching, and extension at Purdue University, then was a center director leader there on campus, then department head at Ohio State, and then a dean of the College of Agriculture and Life Sciences at North Carolina State for the 10-year period before coming here.
Please help me welcome Dr. Jesse Mendez, Provost and Executive Vice President.
My name's Jesse. A similar pathway as far as I started my career as actually before I even went to 4-year institutions. I was an adjunct professor at a community college in Houston, Texas. After that, finished my dissertation. Was a tenure track faculty member at Oklahoma State, endowed professor there. Was later on a school head or department chair there for about 4 or 5 years. Then an associate dean at UCF. Spent a year at the University of Wisconsin on fellowship and was dean at IU Indianapolis, their School of Education, and was dean again in their College of Education at Texas Tech for the past 5 years. And so I've been here since May 2024, and I love it here.
Awesome. Please help me welcome Dr. Margaret Mohr-Schroeder, Vice President for Academic Affairs and Innovation.
Good morning. My name is Margaret. I am a graduate of Pittsburgh State University, where I got my master's and served as a teaching assistant and also as an adjunct instructor at Lebec Community College in mathematics. And then I went to Texas A&M University, where I got my doctorate, and then went to University of Kentucky for the job. Thank you. Was a program chair, program director for the mathematics science programs, and then became the STEM programs for 14 years, then served as associate dean and senior associate dean in the College of Education. Also served 8 years on Senate, faculty Senate, and was Senate vice chair. And then I am 2 weeks shy of 1 year here at K-State and very happy to be back in Kansas.
Welcome. Please help me welcome Dr. Ben Ning, Associate Provost and Chief Data Officer.
Good morning, Ben Ning. I'm approaching the end of my 6th year here at K-State. Very happy about this university. I started my journey to leadership from very small private and then worked through different universities, colleges, including 2-year colleges, multi-campus, community college, regional university. And then 6 years ago, I came to K-State. Looking back 25 years, very happy. Every step I took. We'll talk more about this later. Thank you.
And last but certainly not least, Dr. Jonathan Ulmer, Interim Associate Dean for Academic Programs in the College of Agriculture.
Thank you. I'm actually a substitute. Dr. Jane Shu is our Associate Dean for Research and Graduate Programs, and she, like many administrators, got double booked on her calendar. And so she asked me to serve because I do have a varied path to my position. I'm actually in, I think, week 5 of being the Interim Associate Dean. So I am figuring all of that out. But I actually started as a high school agriculture teacher and then went back to graduate school, where I studied. I started at Nebraska, did my master's at Oklahoma State, my PhD at Mizzou, and then was a non-tenure track faculty member at the University of Missouri, tenure track faculty at Texas Tech for 8 years, and this is my 10th year at Kansas State University. And while I've been here, I have served in leadership positions within the grad council. I've served as a faculty fellow within our college. I've served as an assistant dean, which was a result of that faculty fellowship, and now am serving as the interim associate dean of academic programs.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining us today. You are each incredibly successful leaders, and we are eager to hear about your experiences.
Amazing. So to get the conversation started, we've prepared about 5 to 6 questions for the panel. For the first question, we'll ask all of the panelists to respond, but after that, we'd just like 2 or 3 panelists to respond. So let's start the dialogue. Our first question that we'd like all of the panelists to address is a 2-part question. The first part being, when you were a graduate student, did you expect that you would be in a leadership position that you are in today? And if not, what was your goal, or what did you expect you would be doing professionally? President Linton, would you like to be the first to start us off?
Sure. So my answer to that question is yes and no. When I was in graduate school, I would have probably been voted the most likely to work in the food industry and to be able to work in the food industry with science and business kind of intersecting with each other. But as I went through graduate school, I taught a lot of classes and taught a lot of laboratories, and I had faculty members come to me and say, you need to be in academia, you need to be in higher education, and you need to think about a career pathway that's different than what you think you should be doing. Your passion for teaching is over the top, and your ability to bring people together is really strong, and those are important things to be successful in higher education. So I thought differently after that, and then very soon afterwards developed a mentor and actually created a pathway to be a university president. Almost 30 years ago, I was thinking about the role that I thought I should be in towards the end of my career.
My journey was a little different. I went to Indiana to go first to law school. My game plan back then, I was substantially younger back then in my early 20s, wanted to go to law school, practice law for a couple of years and go into politics. That's always what I wanted to do. Back in this, I was little, that tall. An interesting thing happened on the way to the forum. As far as after my first year, I was a guardian ad litem at the child advocacy clinic, and I had 2 cases. Both of these children, their family trees were all over the place. They lived in trailer parks outside of Bloomington, Indiana, and that was a turning point for me. I was like, well, should I spend the rest of my career practicing law and go into politics, or do I want to be a change agent in education systems? And so after that, continued on with law school. Met my advisor at St. John there in Indiana. He started focusing on what can we do to increase post-secondary access. Access for rural students, access for first-gen students, Pell-eligible students, and ever since then, that set me on the path. My focus, starting out with the PhD, was I wasn't thinking about administration. I just wanted to get a tenure track position overall. And so for those couple of years, I was just trying to pick up every possible skill set that I would need to be successful on the tenure track. And that's the reason one of the first opportunities I had was teaching at a community college. It was called Cypher College in Houston, Texas. Now it's Long Star College. And that was another foundational experience for me as building up to it was never an intention for me to go to administration. And I will say, hands down, I was the accidental tourist overall, but the passion about expanding post-secondary access has always remained the same.
John not wanting to make a rap song over here. My journey was definitely different than all y'all's too, as I think all of ours would be. No, I did not think I would be in a leadership position. I actually did not even think I would be doing anything in the higher education space. I was a student athlete at Pittsburgh State University. It was my way into getting a college education. It was really important to me. I had an injury my senior year of track, so I redshirted and I got an extra year of eligibility. Alongside that, I had taken a lot of extra credit hours, and so I was able to graduate early. And so I didn't want to waste a year of eligibility, 21-year-old thinking. And so my advisor in the mathematics department was like, hey, you should get a master's in math. And I was like, no, I love math. I want to teach math. I don't need to be getting a master's in math. And they convinced me, he convinced me to get a master's in math, said that he would work around my schedule. I had been offered a part-time teaching position in a local high school. I was already doing some other tutoring work, et cetera. I felt like my plate was full, but he said, you'll be great. You can teach. Oh, he said, oh, by the way, did you know you can teach while you're getting your master's degree? And I was like, oh, tell me more. Yes. So I accidentally found myself in graduate school. I love teaching. I was also teaching 7th and 8th grade math and high school math at the same time. And I came to the realization that I wanted to do more. And that the curriculum that I was teaching from was from 1980, and that I was creating new curriculum every single day to better meet the needs of my students. In my bachelor's degree and my master's degree, I was pure math. I took some education courses on the side to get certified, but I wanted to learn more about the curriculum process. So I really, truly, this is going to date me. Anyone seen the movie Legally Blonde? Okay, I had an Elle Woods moment where in the movie, doesn't know what she wants to do with her life. She's trying to follow her boyfriend at the time. I didn't have a boyfriend. And I woke up one day and I was like, oh, I'm going to go get my PhD. She wakes up and decides she's going to go to law school. Right? Okay. And so I did. I chose Texas A&M University for a very random reason, but really because they had their degree program was in the education side and not the mathematics side. And I really enjoyed my journey there, and still didn't think that I was going to go into higher education when I was done. And I will publicly say that I had the world's best advisor, because I was finishing my dissertation. We sat down and he said, Margaret, it's time to decide what you want to do with the rest of your life. I was like, okay. I was 24. He goes, what do you want to do with the rest of your life? What do you want to do next? And I said, well, I want to be a stay-at-home mom. Y'all, I had just spent, I'm at the end of my doctorate. I don't have a partner. I don't have anything. And he just sat there straight faced and he goes, that's really nice. What do you want to do until then? And so then we had the conversation about what higher education was, teaching in it, et cetera. I had teaching assistant experiences, But I didn't know what it was like to be a faculty member. I didn't have anyone in my family who was a faculty member, and my experiences with other faculty really widely varied. And so I wasn't sure that that's what I wanted to do. So then I landed at Kentucky and the opportunities rose from there. So doors open when you don't always see them, and hopefully there are people there who can guide you along the way, even if you have other ideas of your own.
I'll back up a little bit before graduate school. I mentioned I was a high school agriculture teacher. I had no intention of even going to grad school. I had done my bachelor's degree. I was spending every day in school, and I didn't want to go back and be a student. And I was serving my profession. I was asked to go to a meeting, and while I was there, I met the department chair from Oklahoma State, who quickly started talking to me about going to grad school. And that was a hard choice. I actually was accepted and waited another year before I took my acceptance. I deferred my acceptance because I didn't want to leave my kids. My intention of my master's was actually to finish my master's and go back and either teach at a high school or maybe a community college. And I got there and realized how much I loved working with college kids. So I thought maybe I should do a PhD. So I kind of just found myself in a PhD program. And while I was there, ag ed programs are always a very small number of faculties. And I had three of the most recognized faculty members at the time. And they really showed us what it could be like to work in a great environment with great people and have a good relationship. Also during that time, I took a class that the University of Missouri called the Professoriate, which Dr. Payne and I are working on, that actually compared community college, non-research institutions and research institutions, and what it was like to work at those and be part of those. And I realized pretty quickly I wanted to work at a research institution, land grants. Texas Tech was not a land grant, but they are land grant like more than probably anybody else who isn't a land grant. And I decided I wanted to do that. I still had no aspirations of being in a leadership position. One of my professors at Mizzou said he was being asked to move up. He had children who were middle school, early high school, and he said, I'm not willing to lose control of my calendar. Within a year of us leaving, of all of us graduating and going, he moved up, lost control of his calendar, and did it very successfully. And it was good to watch him. I still didn't see myself really in a leadership position. I thought maybe someday I might be a department chair. I've since had the opportunity to interview for department chair jobs. I don't think I want to be a department chair, but when I have interviewed for a couple of times within our college for assistant deans, interim positions, and that's where I think my skill set fits. I can still work with students. I love to teach. In the interim, I'm still teaching a class. If I was full-time, I probably would not be, but I still get to work with students. This position is about making decisions to help students. And that's what I think I always would have done. I've always felt like I was going to do. I just thought I was going to do it in front of a classroom instead of in an office where they come by to see you, or you're going guest lecturing or whatever it may be. So kind of an odd path from where I thought, but I'm still doing the things I want to be doing, just in a different way.
Thank you. The reason I asked John to go ahead is maybe my journey is unique, not unique, it's unique with my colleagues on the table, around the table, but not necessarily unique from some of you in the audience. As an international students, I came to this country. How many of you are international students? So we do have almost half of the audience are international students. So the first part of the question, did I expect am I in my position today? Hell no. So international student, at that time, I had 2 suitcases of everything. That's all I have. I brought 2 suitcases, entered an empty apartment, and that was the first day when I arrived in the US. So to answer that, no, that was not what I expected to be here today. No, at that time, I do have a goal though. The goal is number one, to settle the family, right? Put the food on the table. At that time, guess how much I get paid as a stipend for international graduate student per year? Academic year, not summer. How much? $7,200 per year for 2 semesters. Summer is 900 additional. So that's my first goal, is really help the family survive. Survive is the first thing. The second goal is certainly find my first full-time job, get my green card, okay? So that's the second goal. But beyond this, there is one important lesson I learned during the graduate program. Number one, fostering interest, what your interest is, how to build your graduate program towards your interest. Number two, understand the essence of graduate student. When you think about graduate student, it's a pair of words, self-contradictory. You graduated, but you are still a student. How do you understand the nature, the essence, the importance of your graduate program as graduate student? I think those are the two important lessons. Number one, your interest, understand the essence of graduate students.
All right, we have our next question, which is for any 2 or 3 panelists who would like to answer. The question is, what did you do or what experiences did you have that were most important for launching you onto your leadership journey?
So whenever I give a leadership presentation, I have 4 slides. One is my journey. And then I have a slide on mentors, a slide on leadership development opportunities, and leadership roles. And I think these 3 things are really important. Mentors, I have some 30 mentors that I've had throughout my career. Some are there for 2 years. Some have been there for 30 years. I'm dealing with a very difficult issue today. And I called the president of Virginia Tech and called the president of Clemson that are dealing with similar issues. You need to have that network. It's really important. So many things about leadership, they're not in any book that you're ever going to read. But if you reach out and you talk to people that are going through the same kinds of experiences, they can really help you make good and informed decisions. The second is leadership development opportunities. When you get an opportunity to, as in my case, I went to the University of Nebraska. I did the Indiana Agricultural Leadership Program. Anything that could help the Food Systems Leadership Institute, anything that could help foster better skills in leadership through these programs. Some were a week, some were 2 years. And also to be able to meet colleagues that I could build this network with, that I could learn what I was going to want to do in leadership. And the other one is seek out leadership roles, whether it's a part-time appointment doing a project, whether it's providing leadership in your national or your state organizations, whether it's going through a specific kind of categorization of your career. So when I 30 years ago sat down to develop a journey for my career, it was faculty member, center director, department head, dean, president. And so I had a pathway, and I very, very specifically went after those leadership roles in a place where I thought that I could contribute, but also a place that I think that I could learn. And so I think being proactive and being strategic is another very important thing to start thinking about early on in your career.
I'll just share one tip, I guess, in my journey is just start to feel comfortable and being uncomfortable. When I was a department chair at Oklahoma State, I was asked to become a department, asked to go into leadership, administration leadership. And one of the programs that was part of that portfolio was aviation and space, complete with a fleet of planes and a pilot program. My background is higher education policy, legal issues, and so on. I know nothing about planes. I've seen Top Gun maybe once at that point, but I had to learn fast. They have a different. You compare a budget for a academic unit and compare it to a budget of a flight center. Just is completely different. You have special reports, you have, flight hours, you have, the cost of planes. Planes are boats with wings, it is super expensive overall. And so it was really uncomfortable first year. At that time I took over, we were $500,000 in the red By the time I was done, we were about $400,000 in the black overall. And so, but once again, there was that willingness to be uncomfortable and challenge yourself. Do it again.
Similarly to the uncomfortable piece, I'm the oldest of 5 children. I am an unapologetic Virgo, and I was in 4-H here in the state of Kansas and held pretty much every leadership position possible in 4-H. And so some might say I was a natural born leader. And then when I was team captain as well. Then I went into college, and my senior year, I wasn't voted team captain. And I was like, wait, what? And so it really allowed me to step back and be in the seat of following instead of leading. And that was probably one of the most valuable things I think I could have learned in my own leadership journey, that you don't have to lead from the front. You don't have to have a fancy title to do great things. You can lead from within, you can lead from behind, you can lead from all different areas. And I think that that's just a takeaway that I think about quite often of what it means to be a leader and what it looks like to be a leader.
Do we respond everyone? Or okay, so that's question 2. Yeah, I think for me, the most important experience I had was the last 2 years of my doctoral program and my first job. So the last 2 years of my doctoral program, I served as a presidential fellow. So I worked with a community college president and got the exposure of almost every aspect of the college. So I think that's one important experience. And then my first job fresh from graduate student, I finished my doctoral coursework, didn't even start my dissertation yet. I got my first full-time job and directly into a director's position. And that was a small private college with like 200 employees, everybody knows everybody. And then that also gave me the exposure of a lot of things around different parts of higher education. So I think those two, I would say that 3 to 4 year experience really set the foundation for my future growth because of the breadth of knowledge plus the expertise. Understanding the meaning of PhD, what PhD constitutes, that's also important. We can talk more, certainly.
I would just quickly add the importance of mentors. And I want you to remember that we often think of mentors as somebody that's older than us who has been there and walked that. But your peers can also be amazing mentors. I went through graduate school. There were 4 of us that went through kind of as a cohort. They all 3 made it into leadership positions several years before I did. And I felt like I was a little bit of a failure because my cohort made it there quicker than I did. But they are still my mentors, even though they're my peers. And the people I work with who might be on similar timelines become my mentors. I learn things from Dr. Allers all the time. And we have been at K-State about the same amount of times. We have a very similar path. So those mentors are super important. Those mentors come from taken opportunities. And I, as a really young ag teacher, all the old ag teachers in the district said, hey, we want you to be president of the district. Well, I thought it was because I was great. It's really because they didn't want to. I mean, they were old and wise and figured out how to pass it on to the young guy who would say yes. But I learned so much in that, and I learned from them that I was able to continue to use. Take advantage of opportunities, but I also would, Margaret, I would completely agree. It's good to be a follower also because you grow in that as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. I think we're just going to do one more question for the panel. I want to give President Linton a shout out because this next question is about daily habits you practice. And when I was a junior here in my undergrad, you were asked this question and you responded with telling us that you would sit down every Sunday to write thank you letters. And that's been something that has stuck with me for 3 years. So Full question, getting to where you are today required discipline and commitment. What are some of your daily habits that you practice that you feel are critical to your success?
Well, you answered half of that question, but I'm a list maker. I have lists every single day, and I have a tablet by my bed when I can't sleep, and I think about something at night. My mind is always chugging and moving. And what do I need to do, and what are the lists to be able to get there? And I try to complete the list and have all the emails done by the end of the night so I can start the next day fresh. The other thing, and I'm glad you mentioned it, was appreciation for people. It goes a long way. And so I do every single Sunday. I write 5 thank you notes, 5 handwritten thank you notes. And those 5 cards and those 5 envelopes sit out on my kitchen counter for the entire week to remind me how important that is. And I can't tell you how many people have talked about the meaningfulness of that letter that they received from me, which I can understand because I have a feel-good file. And I suggest all of you have a feel-good file. And a feel-good file is all the really nice letters that people have written you. Because some days are not good days, and you need to pull them out and read them and get an attaboy or an attagirl. And it's really important, I think, to be able to have that appreciation within yourself, but also make sure that you do it for others on your team and outside of your team.
I'll provide a different slice of the pie. I think, the job that I have, you have a laundry list of things to take care of in a day, and part of it is just saying, priorities, what you take care of in that day, and you prioritize the top ones that come up to the bottom, top of the list, and then maybe you set, there are smaller tasks you can kind of put off later. I think in the, in the provost office, we're a little bit of a triage unit of things coming in, and we have no control over what comes in, and we just deal with it. In that triage life, I think the one recommendation is to take care of yourself. I think physical activity is super important. If I'm not in Anderson, I'll be at the gym after work. Or as far as Andrew, I see you on a regular basis. You bench press more than I do, and it drives me nuts. I think that's I could do 225. What you could do more than 225. Stop it. No. Okay. But I think it's taking care of yourself, taking care of your physical health, but also taking care of your family as well. And so even as far as a servant leader in the provost office, it's something I encourage deans, vice provosts, staff, and faculty to do. This job, any job on campus can take over 40 hours, 50 hours, 60 hours of your life. But as far as your family, your health, that cannot be replaced. And so find something that brings you solace. Those are 2 things that bring me solace overall. And so sometimes it's so easy to forget that.
Yeah, definitely. The daily healthy habits. One thing I'm really big on is boundaries. So thinking about what your boundaries are, and in a boundary, I'm not saying like across the line boundary, but just putting some constraints on what you do with your time and when you do it. So for example, Jesse mentioned about going to the work after, or going to the work after the gym. Going to the gym after work. Yeah, similar. I run when I'm not in a boot. And so definitely that. But then also like just small things. I don't have email notifications on my phone. It was probably the hardest thing that I ever did, was to click that little radio button to say no notifications. And you know what? I'm just fine. I still get to my email. I maybe don't have inbox zero confetti anymore. But my life, I think overall is better. I go home at night. I have 4 young children. And so there are times that I do have to work after hours. That's the job. That's okay. But I do find time to carve that out. And that takes a lot of communication. So Jesse and I communicate a lot. We know, like, I know not to bother him right after work because he's at the gym. We typically have a touch point sometime in the evening where we know both of us are on for about an hour and then we're closing it down. The priorities is a big thing. The work will be there tomorrow. It always will be. No matter where you are in your part of your life, the work will always be there. And that's something I always have to recite to myself almost every day in a leadership position, because Jesse's right. We are a triage unit. I have a beautiful to-do list as well. It doesn't always I don't get the satisfaction sometimes of marking it through. So I do, like when something comes up, I do write it down and then mark it off right away. You know, so yeah, taking care of yourself. There's really good resources out there about boundaries, but think about the boundaries piece a lot. It really gives you a lot of peace of mind. And again, a boundary is not crossing a line. A boundary is thinking about how you spend your time, where you're going to spend it, and thinking about your energy around it.
So my colleagues all well said a lot of the habits. For me, maybe one thing is I'm very rigorous on my time schedule, everyday routine, right on time, always keep the same pace. Doesn't matter if it's weekdays or weekend. I keep a very strict daily routine all the time. One thing, perhaps for our international students, this is very important because English is my second language, maybe for most of the international students as well. Listening, listen carefully. Don't misunderstood what your colleagues say. That's very important. That's why I stay focused, stay concentrated all the time. When people speak, I have to listen carefully, understanding not only just what people said, but what the meaning between lines. That's also very important.
So I will fully admit that I'm still working on figuring out my best daily habits. I tried to be a list maker, and usually when I would do hand lists, the first item on the list was to find the previous list that I'd lost. I don't keep a notebook next to my bed, but I do have my phone there. And when I think of something at 4 a.m., I type it into my to-do list, because if I don't write it down, I will not go back to sleep. I will sit there and worry that I will forget it and not focus on it. So I have a way to do that. And I wish I would have done that my entire life, because I've lost a lot of sleep because I was afraid I was going to forget something. So I have a to-do list on my phone. I have a to-do list on my Remarkable. Um, and, but you have to know yourself. So Margaret just asked me to do something that she needs me to do in the next 24 hours. I actually emailed it to myself because I knew it would be on the top of my email list, that it would be something I would see immediately. And I will go look at my email. I may or may not pull up my to-do list quickly, but I know I will go back and look at my email. So know yourself and your habits. Every evening I try to look at the next day's calendar. One of the things I mentioned that one of my mentors said he wasn't willing to lose his calendar. You absolutely lose your calendar. There are things that show up that I have no idea what they are or who they put them on there, and they say I did it. I mean, the item says invitation from Jonathan Ulmer. I didn't put that on there. The first time I got an email back from a classroom that said your time has been approved, I didn't ask to meet in there. I did though. It had my name on it. So I have to look every evening at that. And if possible, I try to have about 30 minutes each morning to clear out the emails that have to be taken care of. And I flag things, and sometimes I will actually forward them to myself again to put them at the top of my email. But just knowing what I've got going the next morning sometimes makes me change my alarm time that I didn't remember I needed to. And sometimes makes me breathe a sigh of relief that I know that there aren't things that I have to prepare a bunch of things for, but I have to at least mentally be ready. But I'll be honest, I'm still working through this process as well.
All right, moving on. I'm sure you all have many of your own questions about how our panelists got to their leadership role and would like to learn more about the work they do. Next, we will take some time for questions from audience. First, for those who those of you who are joining via Zoom, please submit your questions in the chat. Dr. Miller is monitoring the chat and will facilitate addressing your questions. And second, for those who are you are in the room, please raise your hand if you have leadership related questions, and wait for a GSC or graduate school representative to bring a microphone to you.
And this goes to anybody. Anybody can answer this question. On your paths to leadership, at what point did you decide? I'm sure you all had very productive research programs or teaching programs beforehand. At what point did you decide, now we're going to cut that off? We've been working so hard at this for the last 15, 20 years to advance our programs, and now I'm not going to do it anymore, because that is really important in academia.
So at least for me, I guess I was a faculty member for 18 years at Purdue University. And you get to a point, there's not a whole lot more you can do in your job, in your role. You're just doing the same old thing. And for folks that are involved in leadership, that becomes not okay anymore. I probably worked at Purdue 4 years longer than I should have or needed to. And I had a colleague from Walmart, corporate Walmart, who I used to work with as a consultant. And they said, you know, if you're not living, you're dying. And his message to me was, you've done everything that you can do as a regular faculty member. You need to think about doing something at a different level.
Just real briefly, I did something I would never advise anybody else to do. I became an associate professor, and literally the next day I served as department chair. And the reason I share that is that it really undercut my research productivity. And then as I moved down, I got a little bit more work done as an associate dean, but as a dean, that kind of went, you know, and so you have to make some trade-offs overall. You know, I did get, being serving as a department chair, as an associate professor, really did hone in my political skills as a leader, because I had to work with full professors, but also navigate those relationships, the power differential in terms of rank as well. So there was positives part of it. The downside though is I did have to suffer a little bit of detraction on my research agenda.
I'm gonna do it just to make you feel good this time. So mine's a little bit different. I'm actually still actively researching. It's something that is really important to me, and was important, in all of my leadership positions. It's a conversation I've had with, the leaders that I've worked for though. It does look different. And so, you know, in terms of like an active research agenda that you would have, as an assistant or associate professor, it's definitely a little bit less than. But I'm able to do it because I've built a team, and another full professor and I co-lead the team. We lead a research team across 7 different states, and we have cultivated leadership within our team. And we have this mantra of, we work together and we give each other grace. And so it doesn't matter where you are in your journey on our team, we work together. And so my journey is, I'm not going to be able to lead a paper, be the lead author on a paper coming up, but other members of our team are going to be, and I'll get assigned a section, and I'll still get to write and do the work that I love to do and contribute. We have 4 books coming out this coming year, in 2026. It's hard, but it's something I'm still really passionate about. The other piece in my current position, I do work with faculty who are expected to have a research agenda. So I do feel it's important for me personally to still have that connection, so that I can relate and I can still advocate for them. On the grant side, the government took all my funding away, so that was a little bit of a downer.
So obviously I'm in a little bit of a different spot, being an interim, but I had a lot of insight until Margaret just gave her answer. You kind of threw me a wrench there. So a year ago, I was 50% assistant dean and 50% teaching full professor, but my appointment was teaching. Today I'm 100% interim associate dean. I'm still probably 35% assistant dean for grad programs and still probably 20% teaching. So I've had all those pieces. But what I've realized, which is actually what Margaret's made me think about, is I really felt like, as in my experiences so far, that if I was to roll into a position like this permanently, that's when my teaching would probably need to stop, or not a consistent schedule. Also, the research at that point would probably stop as well. At this point, I'm still teaching some, and I'm still looking at grants, because as far as I know, a year from now, I will be back in as that 50-50 split. And so I'm having to balance that and prepare forward. But I can see how doing this job full time really makes it difficult to balance that. And I get my home department, we have an amazing group of faculty that we all work as a team. And I would be able to stay engaged with that if I wanted to, but it would not be the level that I am today. It would not be able to be the leadership role, which really Margaret alluded to also, that it also is only possible if those colleagues are willing to give you grace and willing to understand that you're probably not going to be the lead of any of it, if maybe a little bit, but the colleagues has got to be an important piece of that.
There's something I wanted to add on to my answer. As I was thinking, I'd mentioned I've reached out to two of my mentors this morning to try to get advice. I also had a mentorship meeting this morning where I was mentoring somebody else who's an interim dean at the University of Connecticut, and he was asking me the question, should I be applying for the dean's job? And we talked about the differences between an internal candidate and an external candidate, because they are different. But then I said, it always comes down to three basic questions. Do you want this role? And a part of wanting this role is being able to give up the research or the teaching or the other kinds of things that you've loved doing for 25 or 30 years. So do you really want this role? The second one, are you confident that you're prepared for this role? Do you have the experiences? Do you have the skill sets such that you can walk into this thing feeling like you can be successful? And third, really important, is your family ready for this? When you get in department head positions, when you get into dean's roles and president's roles, your significant other and your family, if you have those, it's a huge part of it, because they're a big part of you being successful. And there may be a big part of the role. As an example, the first lady, when I was a dean, we probably did 150 events together. But now she does over 300. That's a lot. That's almost one a day. And so it's a big commitment that your family's making and your spouse is making towards this leadership role. They may be involved, but they also might need to be there to be able to support you. And I think if you can answer those three questions honestly, and it's a yes, 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 then it's a pretty easy decision about how to move forward.
All right, thank you very much for all the wonderful insights that you've all had as leaders. I just wanted to ask, apart from all the discipline and the scheduling that you put into your daily lives as leaders, what are three core values that you would say have made you successful as leaders? Three core values. Thank you.
Balance. This ties it back to a response I gave earlier about working out. When I was a graduate student and then when I was on a tenure track, I let go of my health. I ballooned up to almost 300 pounds overall. And so that's constantly on my mind as I think about, direction. The other part of it is, I'll come back to the second part of it. But when to provide everybody else the opportunity to respond.
I would two come to my mind immediately. One is, we're in education for students, and that doesn't matter if you're the teacher in the classroom or the administrator in the office. Ultimately, our goal is to help students achieve, become successful in careers. It's remembering what this is for. And you can really get bogged down into all of the other stuff, but the students is why this place is here. And that's why I have a job and why I started in this path was because of the students. And the other one is family. And I have my entire career since I've been married, whenever an opportunity has come up, I would tell people that we applied for a job, not me, because your spouse goes through it with you. And I tell people this interim position is actually just a really big internship for me. And back to what President Linton said, yeah. Well, yeah. Honestly, what I mean is there are experiences that if I had applied for the full assistant dean job, I would have never had. And I get to sit in this seat and experience that and learn that. And that's an internship. And I tell my students, if I'm willing to step out of my comfortable where I knew everything and try something that I have to learn a lot, you should too. But my wife is also having a kind of internship with this as well, because she's starting to understand the demands of my time and the demands that change for her. And so if a position like this comes open at a place we want to be, it will be a joint decision. And that value of my wife and my children helps me make decisions for this. And both of my children, who are one in high school, one in middle school, want to be K-State students currently. And I hope that I am creating a place that they will still want to go to when they're freshmen. So all of that family piece goes into really my core value for this.
Just to be clear, this presidency is not an internship. I've got three. Establishing relationships and building trust. I think that's 95% of leadership. Really, really important. Listening is super powerful. It is much stronger and much more powerful as a leader if you got two ears and one mouth for a reason, if you can listen as much as you possibly can. And honesty, 100% of the time. If you're not honest, it's a core value you should never move against.
Joy, vulnerability, and harmony. You have to find joy in everything that you do every day. Sometimes that joy is outside of work, sometimes that joy is in work, but find the joy every day. Jesse and I try to make each other laugh every day. It's true. Joy. Vulnerability, similar to what people have said, you have to be vulnerable, show up, listen, trust, learn. And as a leader, that is pretty difficult to do sometimes, especially when you're leading large units and you're responsible at the end of the day for a lot of learners, experiences, et cetera. It takes a lot of vulnerability to show up. And as a math person, I push back on balance because balance is 50-50 or exactly even. And that mathematically is impossible unless you're in an equation. And so I like to use the word harmony. Sorry. Harmony means that things are flowing together. Sometimes they flow up together, sometimes they flow down. And so I think that finding harmony in what you do and recognizing and understanding that sometimes work is going to take a little bit more and sometimes life is going to take a little bit more.
So I just want to add two quick core values I have as leaders. Number one is lead by example. So something I do, I have to think what my staff will think, how can I lead as an example to the entire office? The second one is pursuit of perfection. So we know a lot of things. There is always an end goal, the perfection. We are always on the journey. So we have to have the philosophy and effort towards pursuing the perfection. If you think about faculty, it's a single word. For you, it's a person who is teaching a class. For me, when you come to the data world, we have 6 to 8 different types of faculty. So that's the way we want to say, let's continue to pursue the perfection. So those are my two core values. besides many other things my colleagues already said.
And I think, going back to the balance thing, I didn't mean mathematically, but I think it's part of part of it is just, I think, part of our job as a triage unit is we deal with conflict resolution. And sometimes we become the target of people's hostility. And I have to remind myself that it's not really, I'm probably may not be the problem. That's why I have to, going back to the president's comment about listening, but even going past the words, going past, what's their motivation? Is there something did I trigger something in their background, some trauma in the back? It maybe has something to do with me. Maybe there's something else behind it. Just truly listening and analyzing it, even when they disagree with you. The other part of balance is I'm wired a certain way. I know I tend to be more on the left side, so, bohemian sometimes in my thinking. I need to surround myself with folks that think differently than I do. And that's why I appreciate having been, I appreciate working with Margaret, is because they see the world differently than I do. And I think that diversity of opinion, that counterbalance, that willingness to not surround yourself with the echo chamber and to have that team behind you that if there's an intervention, if they think I'm making a poor decision, that they can intervene and we can have a really great dialogue about that, making the best possible decision for the unit going forward. So.
Thank you very much for the responses. I have them written down. I just wanted to have give a follow-up question. Dr. Margaret mentioned about vulnerability. Now, this question, you can choose to answer part of it explicitly, and maybe some of it, I don't know, it's entirely up to you. But I wanted to find out, when was the last time you failed? Because when was the last time you failed, and did that make you feel less relevant or fit for the role you are currently serving, and how did you deal with that failure? So it's like a three question.
If you're not failing, you're not leading. And if you're not making difficult decisions, of which some of them turn out to be the wrong decisions, then you're not leading. I think one of the most important things a leader can do is make a poor decision and reflect and learn, and then come back to his or her team and to be able to say, I got it wrong. This was the decision I made. This was the information, the data I had presented before me when I made that decision. This was the decision I made and why. This is why it was the wrong decision. This is what I've done to communicate to folks about how I can correct this. And this is what I've learned in moving forward. I have learned 100 times more with a bad decision than I have with a good decision. And you need to be able to take chances and take risks and be vulnerable to what Margaret said about having the courage to make those difficult decisions, knowing that you might have got it wrong. I'll say another thing about decisions. I was once given a recommendation from one of my mentors. It's about the 1/3 rule. And when you're making a difficult decision, and his comment was, if you can get a third of the people for you, that's all you need to be able to make a decision to go forward. And I'm thinking, well, a third doesn't sound very good to me. But he explained it to me. If you have a third that are for you in a difficult decision, you probably have at most a third that are against you. And the other third don't have any opinion at all. And then he said, you have 2/3. And so that actually works with really difficult decisions, although it sounds kind of crazy. But when you're making decisions as a leader, especially if you're a leader for multiple years, every single decision, you've made somebody unhappy. Maybe it's 80% good, 20% bad. Maybe it's 50-50. Maybe you've made a decision where 70% are not happy. And at some point in time, if you're a leader long enough in that particular role, you've made people upset because of the decisions that you've made. As a leader, you have to be okay with that, and you have to make the best decisions you can at the time that you need to make that decision. And I would not categorize that as a failure. I would consider that as a success.
I think you have to check your ego at the door to do that. And that's usually the first step. I had a meeting with the deans last week, and there was a communication we put out about a decision that we made that was not worded as tightly as the public should have. And there was a difference between tacit deference and approval overall. And then part of that is to me, I owned it, saying, okay, we could have done better. We could have had more tighter we could have had a tighter communication to you all. And that's, we'll learn from that. We'll continue to move on overall. But it's that willingness to be self-reflective, and that willingness to think about it and to take your ego out of it, and just, you're making the best decision you possibly can for a unit. And so but that first element, that courage that the president's mentioned, is that, is checking your ego and just what's in the best interest of the unit going forward. I'm doing that.
I guess good morning, because we're still 11:30 a.m. My question came up, I think it's Dr. Apologies if I mispronounced your name, Mohr-Schroeder. You mentioned about how you have a team of people that exercise leadership. And when you mentioned that, it reminds me of the book, When Everybody Leads, that came out a few years ago. It sounds like your team is, all of them are exercising leadership. How do you build such a team? And do you sometimes have to give up on someone who just can't exercise leadership? And how do you determine that?
Yeah, yes, that's a really great question for sure. So our team was born out of a love for the work that we do. And the work that I do specifically is around STEM, science, technology, engineering, and math, and providing opportunity, creating opportunity and access, especially for underserved populations, and what that looks like in the formal setting and in the non-formal setting, informal setting. And so there was a small group of us that were doing work in that area. And then we had graduate students who did work in that area. And then we grew our team from there. So it started out very small, and we were very picky about the work together. But in terms of the boundaries, we made sure that we created time and space for each other. We were at different institutions. Way back when, we used Google Meet, which is terrible now. And so we get on Google Meet for 1 hour a week. We collected data across all of our institutions. And we just sat and had conversations. We have 14 people on our team now. I will say that there are some things that we do regularly that have helped us grow and be who we are. At the beginning of each semester, we dedicate a meeting to checking in. We do a check-in. You get to decide what you share in your check-in, but it's your time and space. You get to share about where you are with life. You get to share about where you are with your work, what your semester is looking like, and where you feel like you can contribute or not contribute to the team. And it's our check-in with each other, not just to see where we can go as a research team, but also like helping support each other, whether or not that's accountability or whether or not that's in your personal life support going on. And then we have a author spreadsheet. And this was probably the most vulnerable thing that we had to do together. But we created a list of all of us as authors. And we decided on the author order based on our career goals. And so we prioritized people who were assistant professors or who were going up for full professors soon. They were on the top of the list. Those of us who were full professors were at the end. We need to continue publishing, but author order didn't matter. And then graduate students, it just depended on. If you were a graduate student and you were early on, then you were at the bottom of the list. If you were a graduate student getting ready to finish your dissertation and go on the market, then you were near the top. And then we rotate. We rotate through. Whoever wants to lead the next paper leads the next paper. You get plucked out of the author order, you get put at the top. Most of the time now we co-lead because our data sets are so large, we need 2 people. And then the rest of the author order is set, and then it rotates around. And we constantly check each other on it. I'll go to a meeting and I'll be like, oh, I don't have time to contribute in the same way that I want to for this paper. You should put me at the end. Margaret, that's not how it works. You know, you are your seventh author. That's what you're going to be. That's where you've earned it. And we all help each other out. And so we talk about that all the time. We check in with each other. We give each other grace, and you know, we're there to be together. We did have a member who didn't ascribe to our values. And we thought we were going to have a hard conversation of asking them to leave. But they ended up just kind of exiting out gracefully themselves. I think they realized that, you know, the conversations would steer away from the values of our group. We would bring each other back in. And I think the person understood, and they just decided to not attend anymore, which is fine. And we're still on good terms. Don't burn bridges that don't need to be burned. And that's how we do it. It takes a lot of talking, and it takes someone to step up and say, you know, we're going to have this really hard conversation. Authorship is hard, y'all. Like, when you get there, and if you're already there, you already know, but have the conversation on the front end, because authorship is hard. And if you're working on a team, you gotta have a plan for how you're going to distribute it across your team.
Thank you so much. Oh, sorry. It looks like we have about time for one more question if we have one from the audience.
I wanted to add something to the last question, if I could.
Yeah.
I think, you know, when you're building the team, you obviously want to try to get the best person for each leadership role, and that's really important. But you have to think about the team as a composite. You know, a composite of what strengths are brought to the table. And so that helps you as you're trying to formulate committees and things. Like, as an example, if we're formulating a group that might be addressing some of the challenges on campus and the assassination last week, you need to be able to form leadership of people that are very, very empathetic, right? And people in your team that have that skill set. It's going to be really important to be able to bring them together to be able to lead that effort. So when you look at my team, I know the strengths, the very specific strengths of each team member. And as I look at developing agendas, or I look at developing committees to be able to move the university forward, I know which of these people to be able to put together in order to be able to be most successful. And it's really important that the entire team have strengths across the board. I think that's really important. You need to know your people and what their strengths are, because I think one of the worst things you can do as a leader is force somebody to lead something that it's not within their God-given strengths. So just having that background is important.
Hi, thank you so much for everything so far. For people who are starting out in their leadership careers and maybe aren't being taken as seriously as they want to be taken, what is your advice or experience with that?
Have conversations and apply. Especially if you're a female in the room or identify as female in the room, you're often looked over for leadership opportunities when you're in the same room with people of the similar caliber. And so sitting down and not saying anything, you will often get looked over. So get used to being able to toot your own horn. And I know that's really hard for some people. And you don't have to do it in a way that your ego is bigger than the room, but using words such as, based on my prior experience, or these are the experiences I bring, or the knowledge that I bring, and then applying for other positions. and finding other leadership opportunities, even though you think they might be small, whether it's like leading a conference, serving as a faculty mentor for a student organization, volunteering to assist with the assessment of a program, some just different types of things. So being there and then having conversations, like don't be afraid to have a conversation about leadership opportunities. Hey, keep me in mind about some upcoming leadership opportunities. I finally was persuaded to have a conversation with my dean at the time to express my desire for leadership opportunity. And she was like, Margaret, that's great. I need you to get full professor. And she goes, what's your timeline? And we talked about my timeline then. And so, and then we talked about other things that I could be doing to help contribute overall to the college and the institution while I was achieving a goal of getting full professor.
Persistence, you're going to have doors slammed in your face. That's going to be discouraging. When that happens, and it will happen, just take some time to lick some wounds and then think about, okay, where did I fall short? What skill sets do I need to go forward? When I was on a tenure track, I had a lot of doors slammed in my face, and I can tell you exactly what institutions they were, and I still remember it. And because I hold a grudge and I'm petty. But I think part of that is also that just understanding, like now I understand what skill sets I was lacking at that point. And so that persistence, willing to make changes to your own approaches that don't undermine your values, mind you. That's super important. So, but that align with your values, that's, you need to continue to do that. Persistence though. So.
I think Margaret made a really good point about, making sure that your supervisor is aware that you want to be involved in leadership. There's not that many people that really want to be involved in leadership. And when you have a department chair or a dean that recognizes that you've got someone that's really eager to do it, they're going to really look for opportunities for you. Now, those opportunities may not be fun. They may be absolutely the thing that that department head or that dean doesn't want to do, but it opens up the door. It kind of builds that network. And so anyone that's looking to be able to look at a higher job in leadership and higher education and they're a faculty member, that's the first thing I do is I tell them to get connected with their department head so the department head knows they want leadership experience. I think selling yourself out of the gate's hard, right? Selling yourself right out of the gate, just getting a graduate degree. And I think that's where having those experiences and being able to articulate how your experiences would help you be successful in this role that you're applying for, but also figuring out the right way to be able to reach out to people in the organization where you're trying to get a job. And you have to do this kind of smartly. You can't reach out too much and be a burden. But if you reach out just enough, it really does show your interest and eagerness in this particular position. And make sure you can answer this question. Why do you want this job and why do you want to work for me? It's the first question I ask on any job interview. And if they can't answer that question, I'm less interested. Make sure you can answer that question.
But don't overload yourself. You don't have to take every single opportunity that comes. So going back to that boundaries piece and thinking about what Jesse talked about, it's the give and take, the balance thing about the give and take. And so sometimes there are leadership opportunities that maybe aren't the right fit for you at the right time, and that's okay. It's not a right fit for a right reason. So just be aware that sometimes you'll get asked to do so many things that you feel like you have to do them because you want to do additional leadership or have a bigger leadership opportunity. But having that balance and boundaries helps along the way.
Sometimes when we're young and we've just graduated, we think everybody should expect us to be able to lead. And not everybody looks at us that way. And finding little things to show that you are capable turn into bigger things and bigger things. My first leadership role within my professional association was the chair of a special interest group. We had SIGs in lots of areas. Nobody cared who the chair was of the SIGs, but I worked with people in that group. We pulled off some really good things for the association. And I now had the people within that SIG willing to say, yeah, he's somebody I would work with, or maybe we could elect him into something else. And it was a small piece, but it started to prove myself. And I completely agree with the overwork piece. Sometimes I actually manage the submission process for our conferences within our association, because as a full professor, I had young faculty coming up and saying, is this something that I should apply to do? And my answer was, no, you should work on getting tenured. And then I realized, well, if they're not going to do it, somebody has to. So just because I'm not the president of the association doesn't mean I'm not doing good work and leading within it. And maybe someday I will be president of the association, maybe not.
One important thing, I think, doesn't matter where you are in your career, try to intentionally make a difference between lead versus manage. I think leadership is about vision. Management is managing daily work. So for me, I have to look 3 to 5 years down the road, what we need to do, where we want to go in terms of the vision of the office. You think about the environment, all the AI craziness, all the new laws, regulations related to data, all the commercial products. So there are all kinds of forces around us that as a leader, I have to think about the vision of the office versus manage is I work on different projects every day. Now, you have to provide the kind of vision you have to the team and showing that your vision is in alignment of the overall direction of the office, and your vision does contribute to the progress of the office or the main agenda of the university. So I think that's the distinction I try to make all the time. Lead is about vision. Manage is about everyday operation.
All right, we have a final question, and that we would like to all of the panelists to answer. The question is, you are a role model for us. What is the most important advice you have for graduate student?
Finish your degree. Going back to persistence, I mean, just you're working your theses, some of you are working on your dissertations and so on, but it's so, you're almost there, and I remember working on my dissertation, I was like, man, there's days you just don't want to look at that thing, and so on. But yeah, just continue to focus. And I know the focus has been on academic leadership, administrative experience overall, but there's different forms of leadership across the board. And so you will all practice it in your own way. It's going to look different for each and every one of you here today. Another thing, as far as if you have a goal, whether it's being the university president, maybe it's being, tenure track faculty member, take it, how do you eat an elephant one bite at a time? And so don't look at just break it up, deconstruct in small little tasks to take care of. You don't have to take it on one big swoop, because if you do that, you get really frustrated because that's not really possible. So just continue, just add one piece of your Lego set at a time. But the first part, that big piece, is going to be finishing your degree.
Yeah, I was once told that the goal of graduate school is to graduate. Mine is just live your dream. I mean, it's your dream. It's nobody else's. Don't live somebody else's dreams. Don't live somebody else's expectations for you. You've got one shot at this, and be within yourself.
Finished dissertation is a done dissertation. And so definitely echo all of that. And then give yourself grace. Life happens. And so life happens every single day. And we oftentimes don't give ourselves grace enough to take care of ourselves. And we're the number one. We can't take care of anything else or anyone else unless we take care of ourselves. So just thinking about that and giving yourself the grace. But finish.
Yeah, dream big, finish your degree. And one thing is, I think there is only one title that will follow you for your entire life is PhD. If you get your PhD, it will go with you all your life. Okay, so that's very important. So finish your degree.
Yeah, they can't take it away. Remember that the point of a thesis or a dissertation is to prove that you can do research. It's not to solve the world's problems. We all started our dissertations or our thesis thinking we were going to solve a huge issue. Yeah, if you do, that's awesome. But ultimately, you're just proving that you can do research. And some of my students have got done and said, I found nothing. Great. Now we know there's nothing there. Let's move on to the next question. And then I would also say, most of us, as we're nearing the end of our degree, we start applying for jobs. And the first time we get a rejection, we're like, I just wasted my entire life because they didn't want me there. Well, you know what? There's another opportunity, and it probably wasn't the best place for you, and you weren't the best for them. And rejection stinks, but ultimately it's probably for the right reason. I've interviewed at multiple places and multiple things, and I couldn't imagine being at a better place than I am right now. And if I'd have got those jobs, I wouldn't be here.
Amazing. Well, this has been an incredible discussion. Thank you all. On behalf of the Graduate Student Council and the Graduate School, we want to extend our deepest thank yous to our distinguished panelists for taking the time out of your day to share your insights.
Yes, thank you so much, all of you, for your time and wisdom. We have gained valuable perspectives on leadership, and we hope everyone here today has been as inspired as we have.
And also, thank you to everyone in the audience, both in person and on Zoom, for your thoughtful questions and participation. We look forward to seeing you at our future Graduate Student Council events. Please join us in the atrium for cookies and refreshments.